Before anyone gets upset with me, I really enjoyed M3GAN. However, though I don't think it's a particularly well-directed movie, it's an undoubtedly entertaining one, even through its entirety of illogical antics. At best, it borders on mind-numbing stupidity with grace. At its worst, it's obviously a rated R film cut down to be PG-13 to sell more tickets, losing a certain edge it needs to fully take advantage of its goofy premise. There is no real horror here to speak of, and the comedic nature of the film is what truly stands out here. Once again, wishing that it doubled down on this tone entirely. You've seen killer dolls in movies before, but you've never seen a hyper-advanced AI-driven children's toy sing David Guetta and Sia's Titanium with full seriousness as a lullaby. And that itself is worth the price of admission. Much like Malignant, I'm not quite sure whether I'm laughing with or at the film at hand, but at least with this one, I was more prepared for Akilah Cooper's screenwriting quirks. And though it may not be entirely for me, she is deservedly finding an audience within the saturated market. M3GAN opens with Katie, played by Violet McGraw, losing her parents in a car accident and being sent to live with her roboticist aunt Gemma, played by Allison Williams. At first, the two hardly talk, and Gemma doesn't really react normally to the loss of her sister, being too focused with her job at Funky, a technologically advanced, Seattle-based toy company. When one of her projects, a childlike AI doll named M3GAN, or Model 3 generative android, gets scrapped at work, she decides to secretly tinker with it at home instead, using Katie as a test subject. M3GAN and Katie form a strong bond immediately, and the toy helps her cope not just with the loss of her family, but with adolescence in general. With this, Gemma takes a more hands-off approach before realizing that M3GAN has reprogrammed her own directives, doing whatever it takes to ensure Katie's safety. The story is framed neatly, though completely unrealistically, but that itself doesn't necessarily matter. It's apparent that no research was done to properly portray an AI-driven toy company, and the occasional technobabble still feels cheap as any other film. However, when all the Funky board members are seated in a dimly lit neon red room waiting for a private showcase of M3GAN, the humor stands out with its ridiculously exaggerated portrayal. What the film lacks, however, much like Malignant, is tonal consistency. The humor works in doses, especially with its irreverent nature, but jumping back to the main plotline can feel jarring at times. At least it did for me. Williams does a fine job with her character, but she's not given enough to work with to truly make those emotional beats work, as goes for McGraw's Katie. The narrative feels streamlined to the point that it never truly lingers with the emotional stakes of its characters, constantly moving on to the next story beat. There's a moment in which Gemma discusses Katie's behavior with her therapist, who brings up attachment theory, a psychological theory that states a child, after a loss, will attach themselves to the next person who shows them any form of emotional cognizance. Though Gemma is more aware of M3GAN's impact on Katie after this conversation, the film does nothing to further explore this interesting development. There's never really a moment where the audience will actually believe that Katie will side with M3GAN, even with all the aggression she spews at Gemma. The narrative itself feels like leftover crumbs from a Black Mirror script, with no cohesion to truly tie it together with its goofy premise in the first place. And that's my problem with the film in general. It just feels too all over the place. The movie feels like it wants to go off the rails, but its PG-13 rating ensures that it stays in its lane, which is frankly disappointing. There are a couple kills here that, though are still fun, end up feeling botched together in the editing room to also ensure that PG-13 rating, taking away from the film's effectiveness as a whole. There is a moment in which M3GAN is ripping off a bully's ear, and the appendage starts to stretch in a horrifying manner, building up to a bloody climax. Instead, however, the film cuts and the bully starts running away with shots of his ear fully intact. A few story beats later, a cop tells Gemma that they found a torn off ear at the scene of the crime. And it's within these moments that you can really feel the studio interference. M3GAN, with the right crowd or friends, is a refreshingly fun time for a January theatrical release. I can't help but feel that there's a more cohesive and bloodier cut that would have greatly benefited the overall impact of the film. However, it's still gonna do the trick for most people, and there's no doubt that the PG-13 rating actually helped it become one of the strongest original IP debuts in recent history. Say what you will about the marketing team, but in an era where it's becoming increasingly more difficult to advertise original films, M3GAN honestly changed the game. And with a cliffhanger leaving room for sequels, there's no doubt that their success will continue in the future as well. Let's just hope that next time around, the filmmakers get total control without studio interference. So, with all that said, I'm gonna have to give M3GAN a 2.5 out of 5. I might be being a little too harsh on this rating, but genuinely, though I did have a fun time, it always felt more like a guilty pleasure movie than just a downright good one. There's a lot of moments where the logic seems very shallow, and I'm not sure if it matters with a movie like this, but it certainly did for me, and I think that's just part of the movie-going experience as a whole. And there's one plotline that is just so small and just pointless that I have no idea why they kind of went for in the first place. It feels botched together in the editing room to make it PG-13 and release in January all at once. And though it worked in its favor commercially, I genuinely believe that there is a better version of this movie out there, and that feels a little disappointing in itself. But that said, it's still a fun time, though an extremely flawed one, and I really am excited for future sequels of this movie because it was a movie made on like a $12 million budget, and it's already made $45 million in this first weekend, so hopefully that gives Blumhouse enough money to let these filmmakers do whatever they want with the next sequels. And genuinely, I hope it's rated R, because that's what M3GAN deserves. So anyways, thank you for watching. My name is Abby, your Spaceman Chuck. Hope you enjoyed the review. Got a ton more content coming out soon, so stay tuned.